So you take a look at the Yankees starters from the 2015 season, and each guy had his moment to shine. Pineda certainly. But as we head towards 2016, Bill, let me ask you this. Of that list, who would you trust going into the season? Who'd be your go-to guy?
I would have to be Tanaka. I know his detractors say, how can he be considered a #1 pitcher with a 3.5 ERA? But for me, every time I was at a game and Tanaka was pitching, I felt like the Yankees were going to win that day. There was just something about the guy.
And there's one thing about the way that he pitches, and I agree with Bill about this, is Tanaka goes out there, and even on the days or the nights where he doesn't have his A stuff, you always know he's going to figure something out. So he might have his C stuff, but he'll still figure out a way to get the game into the 7th inning. Has he been the great, over-the-top, amazing pitcher the Yankees thought they were getting? No, he hasn't been. But I still think he has been a very solid #1 type pitcher for the Yankees.
Yeah, he does a little bit of what's good about Pineda, where when Pineda's good, boy, he's really good. You know, when his stuff is working, he can be a really dominant pitcher. Where I think Pineda has trouble is if his good stuff's not there, he does have a little bit of trouble just finding a way to get through the outing. Tanaka doesn't have that. When Tanaka's good stuff is there, he's a dominant pitcher. When he doesn't have his good stuff, he still has a way to get through and at least give you a good winnable start.
Yeah, well, I mean, and the other thing about Tanaka is I know he's not the dominant pitcher that he was when he first came up, but like I said before, he pitches with a certain confidence, and not only from himself, but I think people watching him have the confidence that this guy is going to get this team to the back-end bullpen. You know, in this day and age, there aren't too many really dominant #1 pitchers out there. Most of them are in the free agent market this winter. But so, you know, I won't say that they're getting their total money's worth because they are paying him a ton of money, but he's doing what they asked him to do. He's been their #1 pitcher.
And I think for Tanaka, getting that way was sort of self-taught. I think last season we saw Nathan Eovaldi evolve into that, having the confidence. Jack, we talked about it so many times during the regular season. He went into Rothschild's laboratory and came out a better pitcher when they just kind of simplified things for him.
They did, and the other thing about it, Bob, was that splitter that he had been toying with became such a weapon for him. It involved changing the grip a little bit. He changed the grip on that pitch, and then all of a sudden, you're watching him just mesmerize batters. He found something. The evolution of Eovaldi, we mentioned that a bunch of times. You saw that happening, and he is a guy who, going into next year, the Yankees should believe in him. The one thing about Eovaldi, he's got to figure out a way to get deeper into games. He's a guy who, by the 5th inning, Girardi's thinking about the bullpen. By the 6th inning, he might have to go to the bullpen. Eovaldi should make it his mission to pitch deeper into games.
Well, and he's in his mid-20s. I mean, you know, I think there are a lot of guys who are still kind of figuring out some things at this age. He's been around for a while, but I think that there's still a chance that you could see Eovaldi change even more, I think, as he goes forward. I mean, we saw it this year. That start he had in Miami was kind of a turning point for him. I mean, that was about as bad as it gets. And from that point on, he was a pretty good pitcher. I mean, you look at him with the big fastball, and, you know, he has that split, and you think that he should be more of a strikeout pitcher. He should be able to work deeper into games. You know, maybe that's the next step for him. If what he is instead is a good number 3, 4 type starter for them, who's going to give them 5 to 6 innings every time, look, you could do a lot worse than that. And this is also a young guy, which the Yankees obviously have been prioritizing and targeting. They got a lot out of it.
Well, you know, he has this. More than anybody on that staff, Eovaldi has the stuff to be a #1 pitcher, a dominant #1 pitcher. And I agree with Jack. His one major flaw is the fact that he just throws too many pitches early on. But you could see an improvement in him as the year went on. He was getting better at it towards the end of the year. And the only other thing about Eovaldi that worries me anyway is I worry about the elbow. I really do. He's got that unorthodox, quirky kind of delivery, and I think most pitching coaches and most other baseball people would say, you know what, that delivery puts a little bit of a scare into me.
Yeah, you've got to keep an eye on that. Real quick before we go to break, Luis Severino, from what we saw in his rookie season, do you have any idea what his second season will bring?
Well, it certainly gave you a reason. You understand why he's so talked about. You know, I mean, this guy showed up you know, they talked about that. They set him up for this. I mean, it seems like you want to say he showed up maybe a little earlier than expected, but clearly that wasn't the case. I mean, they held back his innings because they thought he could do this, and I think he showed this late in the year that, I mean, there's a reason this guy has the potential to be a real number one. I don't know if you count on him to be that next season, but he's coming in. I think you pencil him in and think of him as a number two.
I agree with you, Chad, and it might be too much to ask in his second season, his first full season, to say, hey, be a top end of the rotation guy, but that's who you track him as being. I love his swagger on the mound. I love how fast he works, gets the ball and throws it, and then if you're the Yankees, you love his stuff. So, Bob, when you ask what can you expect out of him, I mean, this is a guy, to me, he's 12 to 15 wins for the Yankees next year, the very solid ERA, and a guy that fans are going to want to watch.